What happens when a retired veteran tries to save his food during a blackout only for his entitled neighbor to steal his generator? She had no idea she was taking the power that would bring her downfall in the most unexpected way. Let me tell you something about living in a neighborhood where folks sip on entitlement like it's sweet tea. You can cut your grass, pay your taxes, wave to every soul on the block, and still end up enemy number one for no other reason than just existing. My name's Harold. 62. Veteran. Retired HVAC tech. Raised 3 kids, buried one, and somehow still find peace in watching my tomatoes grow in the backyard. And what I'm about to tell you, it ain't fiction. It's a slow-cooked recipe of injustice, arrogance, and a heaping spoonful of poetic justice, but don't get ahead of me now. Let me lay this out the way it really unfolded. It all started with a blackout. Not some metaphor for confusion or social commentary, I'm talking literal darkness. Power grid failed one humid August afternoon when the temperature hit 103 degrees in the shade. Every AC unit wheezed its final breath, every freezer began sweating like a nervous defendant in court. And you know what people do when the lights go out? They panic. They look for someone with answers. Someone with power. Well, guess who had a generator? Yeah, that'd be me. A 6-year-old diesel champion 7,500-watt portable beast sitting clean and ready behind my shed. I maintained that machine like it was a classic car. Changed the oil every spring. Ran it monthly just to keep it humming. When the blackout hit, I rolled it out, plugged my essentials in fridge, freezer, fan, one light in the kitchen, and sat on my porch like it was any other summer afternoon. Sipped my lemonade. Listened to the hum of the engine. Felt grateful. That's when the trouble started. See, I live in a cul-de-sac. 13 homes. 11 white families, 1 sweet Mexican couple, and me, the retired old black guy at the end of the street, as I overheard Karen once whisper to her friend like I was the punchline to a joke she didn't have the courage to say aloud. Karen lived 3 houses down. Mid-50s. Botox brows. Hair so tight it looked like her scalp was trying to escape. HOA president. Drives a white Range Rover and believes every minor inconvenience is a constitutional crisis. You know the type. She came storming down my driveway that evening, heels clicking like thunder on concrete, arms flailing like she was directing invisible traffic. Harold, you can't do this, she snapped, pointing at the generator like it was a crime scene. I looked up from my chair. Do what, Karen? Keep my food from rotting. You're violating HOA guidelines, she screeched. Combustion devices must be approved and screened from public view. Now let me pause here to explain something. This woman once fined old Mr. DeLuca across the street because his dog barked 3 times before 8 a.m. This is a woman who took a tape measure to check whether our mailboxes were uniform in height. And now she was trying to shut down the only working generator in a 10-house radius during a blackout. Karen, I said slowly, placing my lemonade down like it was a loaded weapon, unless the HOA is prepared to refund every resident for spoiled meat and heat strokes, I'm gonna keep this generator running. That didn't sit right with her. She flinched like I'd slapped her with a rolled-up constitution. I'll report this, she snapped. You do that, I replied with a smile, but do it before your ice cream melts. She stormed off, heels clicking so fast I swear I saw sparks. Now here's where things took a turn. 2 hours later, I'm inside fixing myself a sandwich, turkey, cheddar, a little Dijon, when the hum stops. Silence. My kitchen light flickers out. I step outside and see it, my generator's gone. Gioni. At first, I thought maybe I'd gone senile. 62 ain't ancient, but I've had enough head bumps over the years to misplace a tool or two. But a 400-pound generator? That ain't something you just misplace. Then I saw the tire tracks. Fresh. Pointing toward Karen's driveway. You ever have that moment when everything goes quiet, not outside, but inside you? My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just stood there, sandwich forgotten, watching that patch of gravel like it had personally betrayed me. I walked back inside. Didn't say a word to my kids. Just grabbed my phone, opened the camera, and filmed the empty space where my generator used to be. Then I sat. In silence. Sweating in my dark kitchen while the fanless air turned thick and mean. And what do you know, about 20 minutes later, I get a call from Karen. Hi Harold, she said in that fake sweet voice people use when they know they've crossed a line but want to pretend they're doing you a favor. Just letting you know that I've relocated your generator temporarily. The HOA had concerns, and since I had a spare outlet, I thought I'd plug it into my fridge. You know, for safety. Let me repeat that for clarity. She took my generator uninvited, unannounced, and plugged her fridge into my machine. Now, I've seen petty in my life. I've watched grown men argue over parking spaces, seen church ladies throw shade over who brought the better casserole. But this was an Olympic-level violation of common sense and decency. I swallowed hard. "Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you stole my property." "Oh no, Harold," she replied, her tone as smug as fresh paint. "I protected the community." My jaw clenched so tight I heard my molars whisper, "Don't do it." "Karen," I said slowly, "bring back my generator before someone gets hurt." There was a pause. "I don't respond well to threats," she said, and hung up. I sat in that sweaty kitchen, surrounded by dark, melting silence, and I realized something. This wasn't about a generator. It wasn't about HOA guidelines. This was about control. About someone who saw a retired black man minding his business, doing for himself, and decided that was unacceptable. She didn't just take my generator, she tried to take my dignity with it. Now I'm not the type to go nuclear without cause. But that moment? That was cause. So I stood up, wiped the sweat from my brow, and looked out the window toward her house, where I could faintly see the soft yellow glow of a refrigerator bulb behind her curtains. She thought she was clever. She thought she'd won. She thought wrong. To be continued. What happened next changed everything. You won't want to miss what unfolds when the pressure boils over. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the heat, though trust me, lying in a stale room with windows barely cracked while humidity settles over your chest like a wet blanket ain't exactly restful. No, I didn't sleep because my mind was racing. See, when you're 62, you don't argue the way young folks do. You don't flip tables, record viral rants, or throw hands in the street like you're in some reality show audition. You plan. You remember lessons your mama taught you between spoonfuls of greens and gospel radio. Like, let fools show themselves, and when they go low, dig a tunnel and come out behind 'em. That kind of wisdom. But my pride? That was bruised. Real bad. I mean, here I am, served my country, raised kids, paid off a 30-year mortgage, having to sit in my own damn kitchen like I'm squatting in someone else's house because a nosy neighbor felt entitled to take what was mine. You ever had someone confiscate your humanity and call it protecting the neighborhood? Next morning, I got up early. Real early. Sun hadn't even yawned yet. I pulled on a clean pair of jeans, a shirt with Tuskegee Airmen stitched across the chest, and I walked out to my porch with my coffee in hand like it was any other Saturday. Only difference? I had a plan now. But before we get to that, let me tell you what Karen was doing. While I was trying to breathe through sticky air and boiling frustration, she was living like royalty. Her windows were fog-free. Her house lights glowed like it was Christmas. The hum of my generator vibrated faintly down the block like a cruel lullaby, reminding me with every pulse, she's got your power. And the kicker? She had the nerve to invite people over. I kid you not. Noon hit and suddenly I see 3 Subarus pull into her driveway. One by one, ladies stepped out in yoga pants and sun visors, carrying trays of fruit and gossip. They all waltzed into her cooled home like she hadn't turned my life into a blackout episode of Survivor Cul-de-sac edition. That was it. I'd seen enough. Now, you might ask, why not call the police? File a report? Well, I did. I called them. Filed it. Gave a statement. You know what the officer said when he saw Karen's Range Rover parked outside and my generator humming behind her shed? He scratched his chin and said, "Well, sir, technically if it wasn't secured or marked, she could say it was community safety equipment. There's no obvious theft intent per SE." I stared at him like he'd grown feathers. Community what? He adjusted his sunglasses. You know how it is. These HOA neighborhoods, they blur a lot of lines. You ever had a rage so quiet it felt cold? I thanked him. Shook his hand. Watched him drive away. And I stood there thinking, so if someone takes your shovel and digs their own garden, the law calls it landscaping? Fine. If the law didn't want to step in, I would. Now, I told you I was an HVAC tech, right? 28 years fixing systems folks didn't know how to spell. I know wiring, fuel flow, circuit loads. I can read an electrical panel like some folks read palms. And that morning, while Karen sipped cucumber water in her climate-controlled palace, I pulled out my old toolkit and got to work. Not to sabotage, never that. I wasn't about to stoop to the level of someone who raids her neighbor's property like it's a yard sale. But I was going to remind her that actions come with reactions. So I started where it mattered, awareness. First, I printed 20 bright orange flyers that read, "Stolen power, community silence equals complicity. Ask Karen whose generator she's using today. Harold, Lot 13. I laminated M. Tacked one to my mailbox. Slid a few under neighbors' doors. And before long, folks started noticing. I caught glimpses, curtains parting, phones snapping photos, hushed voices at the mailbox. Not confrontation. Not yet. But it was building. Pressure. Whispers. Energy. See, in neighborhoods like mine, no one wants to be first, but no one wants to be last either. Then came Sunday morning. The blackout was still going. Power company said 2 more days. I knew Karen's fridge was working because I saw her teen daughter toss a whole tray of ice cubes out into the lawn like they were snowballs. Meanwhile, my butter was melting into a sad puddle in a cooler. So I walked over. Not yelling. Not stomping. Calm. Controlled. Karen opened her door wearing a linen robe and a tight smile. The kind you use when a preacher stops by unexpectedly. Well, good morning, she said sweetly. Karen, I said. I'm here for my generator. She blinked. Still with that? Still, I said. Unless you'd rather compensate me the market value for temporary use. With interest. She actually laughed. I don't think you understand how the HOA works, she said. Oh, I understood. I understood too well. The HOA, I replied, doesn't authorize theft. And last I checked, it doesn't override state law. You've got 30 minutes. She tilted her head. Or what? I didn't answer. I just turned and walked back. And that's when things hit full boil. About 20 minutes later, I'm sitting on my porch when I see 2 more of Karen's friends arrive. One of them, a woman with a blonde ponytail so stiff it looked starched, walked past my house and winked at me. Winked. Like this whole thing was a game. But here's the thing about systems, they crack when you shine a light on them long enough. Later that afternoon, I got a knock. It was Carla, the woman who lived next door. She looked nervous. Harold, she said, I saw your flyer and I think Karen's been using our outlet too. Our electricity blipped earlier and I heard something behind her house. That was it. The floodgate. By nightfall, I had 4 neighbors at my door. All with complaints. All with stories. Karen hadn't just stolen from me, she'd daisy-chained her cords across multiple properties like some twisted suburban octopus, siphoning off whatever she could while smiling through potluck meetings. But she made one mistake. She didn't know I had documented everything. Photos. Video. Decibel readings. A time log of every moment the generator was on and where it echoed from. I even had a short video of her dragging the generator across her lawn, cursing under her breath like a cartoon villain. So I made a call. Not to the police this time. To the local paper. See, there's something about seeing your name printed in bold next to the words unauthorized use of emergency equipment that shakes folks in ways a ticket never will. But that's another part of the story. Because what happened next? Let's just say it flipped everything upside down and made sure Karen would never touch another wire that wasn't hers again. This is the turning point. Everything you've waited for right now. Stay with me because the moment of truth is about to hit, and Karen? She's not ready for what's coming. By the time Monday rolled around, the blackout was on day 3 and my patience was holding on by the last thread in my church socks. The house smelled like warm pickles and desperation. Every candle had melted into little wax pancakes on the windowsills. My food was officially gone, no more milk, no more eggs, and my last piece of salmon had turned the color of disappointment. I was tired, hot, and fed up with being the punchline in Karen's HOA comedy hour. But let me be real clear, I hadn't said everything yet. Because what I did next, that wasn't rage. That was discipline. You remember the neighbors that started showing up at my porch? Well, turns out I wasn't the only one keeping receipts. Carla had a video of an extension cord running from her outside outlet into Karen's garage. Jimmy from 2 doors over had a screenshot of a group text where Karen bragged about securing backup power like a boss. And Mrs. Contreras, bless her, 81 years old and sharper than a needle, she had a printed log of every time her living room lights blinked. That woman tracks power like she tracks birthdays, meticulously. So we had a little community meeting. Not at the HOA clubhouse, of course. No, that place was Karen's kingdom. We met at my house, hot, dark, and honest. 5 neighbors. 1 folding table. A notebook. A plan. I just want her to stop treating us like background characters in her little parade, Carla said, twisting a water bottle like she wanted to snap it in half. She took from you. From all of us, Jimmy added, face red from both heat and frustration. And I nodded, slow and steady, because they were right. Karen's behavior wasn't just about a generator anymore. It was about something deeper. It was about people who believe that rules apply to others, not for them. That authority means exemption. That power, literal or symbolic, belongs to them by default. You ever seen entitlement so thick you could trip over it? Well, Karen wore it like perfume. But this time, she'd overplayed her hand. Because by 4 p.m. that day, her name was printed bold in the county news site's online headline. Local HOA president accused of unauthorized use of neighbor's generator during blackout. There was a photo too. Not mine, just a file image of a suburban street. But you didn't need a Pulitzer to read between the lines. I didn't give an interview, but I submitted a statement. Clear, professional, detailed. I described the event as a clear violation of neighborly respect and property rights. I also added a note about how the HOA president had refused all attempts at peaceful resolution. And oh, the comments section? That thing lit up like a Baptist choir on Easter morning. People were mad. Not just from our street, folks from other HOA-locked neighborhoods, readers from nearby towns, even one guy who claimed Karen once tried to report him for using non-regulation mulch. Still not sure what that is, but he was real upset. By sunset, Karen's house was silent. No guests. No yoga moms. No teen tossing ice cubes. Just a closed garage and curtains drawn tighter than a politician's smile. But don't think I celebrated yet. No, sir. Because the storm hadn't passed. It was just starting to turn. You know what happens when someone like Karen feels cornered? They don't apologize. They don't reflect. They retaliate. And that's exactly what she did. The very next morning, I got a letter taped to my mailbox. Typed. No name. No HOA header. Just one bold sentence. Remove all defamatory materials immediately or face legal consequences. Now, let me tell you, when you get a threat from someone too cowardly to sign their name, it's less legal notice and more toddler tantrum with a thesaurus. Still, I took a photo, logged it, and filed it. Then I went about my day. But Karen? She wasn't done. By noon, she'd filed a formal complaint with the HOA board claiming I had operated dangerous machinery in a residential zone without board approval. She added that I had incited unrest and created an unsafe neighborhood environment. You'd think I'd released wild raccoons from a catapult the way she was talking. But here's where things snapped. That evening, as the sun dipped and the blackout finally neared its end, the power company trucks came rolling in. 4 of them. Beeping, reversing, workers climbing poles like it was the Olympics. Power came back with a collective cheer up and down the street. And with it? Silence. I heard my fridge hum back to life. My lights blinked. The fan in my living room wheezed once, then spun like it was grateful to be alive. I stepped outside just to breathe it in. That's when I saw it. Karen, dragging my generator. It was on a little red dolly. She rolled it up my driveway with all the grace of a drunk wheelbarrow. No words. No apology. Just left it at the edge of my grass like it was some lost suitcase she didn't recognize. Then she turned and started to walk off. So I followed her. Slowly. Calmly. With the quiet confidence of a man who's played the long game and knows the scoreboard finally reflects it. Karen, I said, just loud enough for her to hear. She stopped. Turned. Yeah? I pointed to the generator. Looks like it survived your hospitality. She blinked. Said nothing. And my fuel. I added. Or are we pretending it ran on positive vibes and HOA bylaws? That's when her lip twitched. I've done nothing wrong, she snapped. You made this a spectacle. I chuckled. No, ma'am. You did that. I just turned the lights on. She stormed back to her house, but slower this time. Shoulders tight. No heels. No crowd. Just a woman who realized that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't untouchable. I rolled the generator back to its home, checked it top to bottom. It was scratched. A little dinged on the side. Fuel tank nearly empty. But it was mine. And it was back. And I was just about to head inside when I saw something else. A little note tucked into the side of my fence. Written in pencil, crooked like a kid's homework. Thank you for standing up. You made us feel brave too. No name. No signature. Just that. And it hit me harder than all the drama combined. Because this wasn't just about Karen. It was about every quiet neighbor who thought they had to tolerate abuse just to keep the peace. It was about folks being told to just ignore it or don't make trouble. It was about standing up not just for yourself, but for everyone watching to see if they're allowed to do the same. So I locked up the generator, sat on my porch, and waited. Because I knew this story wasn't done yet. No, sir. What happened next? Well, let's just say I didn't need to lift a finger. Because justice? It showed up wearing a suit. The final chapter is where everything erupts and what Karen faces will leave you stunned. You've come this far, don't miss the payoff. You ever wake up feeling like something in the air shifted? Not the weather. Not the news. Not your bones aching louder than your alarm clock. No, I mean the shift. That quiet, unexplainable knowing that someone who once stood over you just lost their balance and the ground is getting real slippery beneath their feet. That was Tuesday morning. And after everything that had gone down, Karen stealing my generator, trying to twist the whole neighborhood against me and pretending the laws of decency didn't apply to her, I wasn't planning revenge. That part was done. Yeah? I was just watching the pieces fall. See, when you plant truth in the soil, sometimes it takes a while, but eventually, that thing sprouts and it's visible to everyone. So when I pulled out my lawn chair and poured myself a tall glass of iced tea, I wasn't doing it to relax. I was expecting company. And wouldn't you know it, at 9:13 a.m. sharp, a black SUV pulled into our cul-de-sac. Not flashy, not loud, government plates, tinted windows, moving with that slow confidence that says, we don't ask twice. I leaned forward. The driver's door opened. Out stepped a tall brother in a navy suit and polished shoes. Sunglasses sharp enough to slice a bagel. Badge on his hip, briefcase in hand. He didn't look around. He already knew where he was going. Karen's house. Now, I ain't one for eavesdropping usually, but when federal-looking folks stroll up your enemy's walkway, you puck up like a deer in tall grass. 2 minutes later, the door opened. Karen stepped out. Robe. Slippers. Hair frizzed like she'd slept under a heat lamp. And from where I sat, I could see it all, the stiff body language, the awkward nods, the way her arms folded like a school kid caught passing notes. The man in the suit handed her a document. She glanced at it. Then again. Her mouth moved, but no sound. Then she tried to laugh. You know, the kind high-pitched and dry, like a balloon squeaking through panic. He didn't laugh. She pointed toward the backyard, and he followed her. They disappeared behind the fence. Now I wasn't sure what was being said, but I knew why he was there. Because while I had stayed quiet after the article came out, someone else hadn't. Turns out one of the neighbors who got their power siphoned had connections in the city's Public Utilities Commission. And after reviewing the generator video, they flagged it as a potential safety hazard, a privately owned machine being operated without consent and extended across multiple properties. That's not just rude. That's a code violation. And when you break codes in an HOA neighborhood, you don't just risk a slap on the wrist. You risk losing your title. See, Karen wasn't just the self-declared queen of our street. She was a formally elected HOA president, a title she wore like pearls, except she'd used that position not to serve but to control. But here's the catch: HOA leaders have to pass background checks and adhere to ethical conduct policies. That includes misuse of neighbor resources, failure to disclose conflicts, and creating hostile residential environments. Check. 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 By the time Suit Guy left her house, Karen was pale and stiff as a yard gnome. He didn't take her in. That wasn't his job. But what he did leave her with? A notice of pending investigation. And the moment he pulled away, the neighborhood started buzzing, quiet but real. Carla saw him first. She texted me. Did you see that? Folded hands, medium dark-skinned tone. Jimmy sent me a thumbs-up emoji with a little siren. Even old Ms. Contreras called and said, Harold, I ain't one to gossip, but I've got fresh popcorn if you want to sit on my porch. Now I ain't petty. But I'm human. So yeah, I grabbed a bag of peanuts and walked over. By evening, the rumors had caught up to Karen like an overdue bill. Someone said she was calling board members in a panic. Someone else said she tried to schedule a last-minute emergency vote to suspend her own accountability clause. And someone else, and I'm not naming names, said she cried in her car for 10 minutes straight, gripping the steering wheel like it owed her an apology. But let me bring this full circle. Because all this drama? The chaos, the ego, the arrogance, it wasn't about a generator. It was about entitlement. It was about someone who believed rules were suggestions and other people's property was hers to manage. Someone who couldn't imagine a man like me, a quiet, 60-something veteran who minds his tomatoes, would dare challenge her illusion of control. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't alone. That little note I found on my fence? That wasn't the only one. By week's end, I had 5 more. Tucked into my screen door, mailbox, even slid under my windshield wiper. Thanks for standing up. We didn't know we could push back until you did. She's been doing this stuff for years. And that right there? That hit harder than any headline ever could. Because truth-telling is contagious. It takes one voice. One neighbor willing to say no more. And suddenly others remember they've got a voice too. That following Monday, the HOA board held an emergency vote. Not at the clubhouse, no one trusted that place anymore. They rented space at the library downtown. Neutral ground. I didn't attend to grandstand. I just sat in the back, arms crossed, listening. Karen stood at the podium, hair flat ironed, dressed in a beige pantsuit that tried its best to say, put together, but her voice was brittle. Defensive. She blamed confusion. She blamed panic during an emergency. She even blamed unclear language in the HOA bylaws. But what she didn't do, take responsibility. The board listened, then voted. And just like that, the crown slipped. Karen was removed. Not banned from the neighborhood, but no more president, no more power, no more quiet abuse hiding behind community policy. She walked out past me, eyes locked ahead. No nod. No apology. And I didn't need one. Because I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for peace. That night, I rolled my generator back behind my shed. Cleaned it. Tuned it. Stored it like the valuable it is. Not just for power, but for the lesson it stood for. That standing up quietly, clearly, with your dignity intact isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing you can do. Especially when someone's trying to convince you that what's yours belongs to them. I'm Harold. I live on lot 13. And if you ask anyone on this block, they'll tell you exactly who owns the power now.